The concept of remaking a video game from the past is in vogue. In fact, it is more popular than ever. This is what is called a remake. It often raises some controversy because there are people who believe that the video game industry is running out of ideas and its only way out is to resort to gems from the past and sell them as new instead of inventing new ideas. And while seeing it from that perspective is completely true, it is also true that over time I have learned to view the concept of remakes more favorably. Obviously, this applies to past games that I absolutely loved and that I would actually like to relive with current technology and graphics, of course. The problem for me arises when we start making remakes of games that have been on the market for very little time and really have graphics that do not require much of a remake. Like, for example, Last of Us. If you look closely, you'll realize what you are seeing on screen is a mod that remasters Formula 1 2010. In other words, it is not the original game, but it simply looks better with different lighting, textures, and resolution. But in essence, it is completely the same game that was Formula 1 2010. Remastering simply involves graphically improving a game, but in no case does it mean to remake it. And this is where we come in with the title of the video. What if they made a remake of Formula 1 2010? What if the classic content in the F1 games didn't go through the messes that have been introduced in recent years? What if we experiment with new concepts like the famous remake that is selling very well in other companies? And in Formula 1, as I said, it has never been tested. Just to clarify, I'm not talking about introducing a DLC from a specific season into the current game, which is something I've said hundreds of thousands of times and I believe would have been a good way to implement it. I have always defended the idea of including 20 classic cars, one from each year. It's not very appealing because in the end, you can't do much with them. However, I would prefer a season from, the 2002 season, boom, and they just give you the cars from 2002. At least you can do a lot with them. Championships, races, and all that requires licensing work too. But anyway, the point is, I'm not referring to that, okay? That would be a DLC where they simply introduce the cars from X season and integrate them into the mechanics of the already completed game in such a way that it would be a DLC, for 20, 25 euros or something like that. No, I'm not talking about that. A remake of Formula 1 2010, for example, would involve completely redoing the game. That is, using the graphics engine that the current Formula 1 uses, yes, but remaking the game because you have to use different cars, different models, different graphics, etc., etc., etc. Remake the game by adapting it to the regulations in force at the time. In this case, for example, that of 2010, using a development system, improvements, and rules that are fully in line with the 2010 season, a completely developed and focused system for the 2010 season. Don't recycle anything you have. Well, you can recycle the most obvious things. The graphics engine, well, probably, as I said, you would use the one you currently have, right? But when I talk about remaking a game, I mean not cutting corners, having to develop a new career mode, as I said, with all the development and all the regulations and all the details adapted to that 2010 season. This would involve having to introduce all the circuits that are not currently available, the versions of the circuits from 2010, a new career mode adapted to that 2010 season, but using the technology of the year we live in, which is 2024, thus recreating a 2010 season that is much more realistic than the one we had in the original Formula 1 2010. Perhaps even introducing new challenge modes representing different situations from the 2010 season, such as a recreation mode, with different drivers, different objectives, and a completely new AI that is similar, in fact, to what we have in F1 23. And of course, with the option to play a championship mode available to race with all the drivers, not just a career mode with your driver, but also a championship mode with a real driver, without leaving out, of course, the My Team mode. In a way, we would be modifying the original structure of the game Formula 1 2010, because we would no longer be talking about simply remaking the game with current graphics, but rather about remaking the game and completely changing its concept, that is, the concept and content of what Formula 1 2010 was, because evidently in Formula 1 2010, the career mode, it wouldn't have anything to do with what I've said. It didn't have a challenge mode. It didn't have, it would be, as I say, a game that completely changes the concept. And the only thing that remains essentially is the season itself, because everything else, as you can see, would be different. Therefore, it might not be a remake of Formula 1 2010, but a reboot. However, the terminology is the least important aspect. I would definitely say it's a remake because I think changing the content, gameplay, and modes falls within adapting the mechanics to the present. Obviously, a 2024 Formula 1 game cannot consider not having all of that I just mentioned. But well, we would be talking about a completely new game, simply recreating a season from the past. So we have to be realistic. You couldn't expect something like that for 15, 20, or 30 euros. In other words, any remake nowadays is sold almost at the price of a new game. We're talking about 60 or 70 euros even. But well, since we're talking about a past season and such, it's not the same as simply remaking a game. But honestly, I would pay 40 or 50 euros for a game like the one I just mentioned. For a game done right, for a proper remake of the 2010 season. And I am talking about 2010 because I used it as an example for this video and how I would approach it. But the reality is that, obviously, this idea has its limits. The further we advance in time, in the chronology of games, the harder it is to justify making a remake, since games are becoming better, more realistic, with better graphics, and it is very difficult to improve them with a remake. Two examples of two opposite poles. For example, the remake of The Last of Us 1 is like, well, okay, you release it to me. Okay, but it's really completely dispensable, isn't it? And then there's the other extreme, which is the remake of Final Fantasy VII, which is a game from '97, I think. It was obviously polygons, so there you really enjoy the change much more. The difference is brutal, and there's obviously much more potential, right? Well, the same goes for Formula 1. A remake of Formula 1 2017 wouldn't have much to improve compared to one from 2010, 2004, or 2001. But honestly, I believe that 2010 is a game with plenty of potential for improvement because it has many features that are completely outdated today, and therefore a proper remake could be made. And obviously, if we go further back, there would be even more potential. In 2006, 2005, 2004, and the further back you go, the more room for improvement you have to create a true remake that is genuinely impressive. But well, I mentioned 2010 because it's a season that I really like. It's a game that I like a lot, and it's a realistic game. That Codemasters could make a remake. Why? Because it is a game for which they still hold licenses. Unlike the one from 2001, it is not so easy for Codemasters to make a remake now due to licensing issues and such. What is clear is that Formula 1 2010 is a game that I believe could be eligible for a remake, and in fact I would dare to say that from Formula 1 2010 to Formula 1 2014, it becomes more complicated to justify a remake starting from 2014. However, from Formula 1 2010 to Formula 1 2014, these are games that have many gaps when compared to today. Comparing it to the present, there are many gaps and differences from what it could be, and graphically, they are frankly improvable from 10 to 14, so I believe it is indeed a very good idea. However, starting from 2015, there is a graphical leap in 2016, and they also introduced a career mode, which is really not as good as today's, but it has already made a significant jump, making it more difficult now. Make a statement by doing a remake of that. But until the 14th, I think it could definitely happen. There would be plenty of potential to do it. In any case, I don't want to get anyone's hopes up because I'm sure some think it's a good idea, while others not so much, but there are people who would indeed like it. There is not a single hint that such an event could occur. This is what I have to say. This is a concept idea video of what I would love, beyond a DLC for the season that I've always mentioned, but I thought about it later, and with so many remakes, now that I am also playing the remake of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, for example, it comes to my mind, and the truth is that I think it could be good. But well, as I said, there is not a single indication that this event could happen, although personally I think it could be well done. If it were done well, it could be a hit. But for now, it will stay there. And to close the video, well, the question, would you pay 40 or 50 euros for a remake of a classic Formula 1 game? But when I talk about a game, I mean a well-made game, really. We're not talking about putting out a piece of crap or a shoddy product no, in a game, it should be well-made, with its career mode designed specifically for that season, with development in line with that season, with engine regulations for that season, with different challenge modes for that season, and everything I've mentioned, adapted to current technology, graphics, etc. Would you spend 40 or 50 euros on a remake of Formula 1 2010 or Formula 1 2006? I'll leave you the question so you can answer it. And as for me, that's all in the video about what if there was a remake of Formula 1 2010. If you liked it, I appreciate the like. And as I said, that's all from me. We'll see each other in the next one.